If you're someone who thinks that getting jacked and strong requires some hidden occult knowledge reserved only for those that prove their worth to the gods of gains, then I'm sorry to break it to you, but building muscle, while not easy, it's not as complicated as people make it to be. And in this video I'm going to tell you the biggest mistake you probably make that keeps you from getting results and give you the only 7 exercises you really need to build muscle at home, no matter your training level, even if you've been training for a while without any real results. But before we dive in, if your goal is to get jacked and strong and build a berserker physique, whether you own just a pair of gymnastic rings or a full-fledged home gym, then click the link in the description below and grab my free Gymless Marauder training plan with both 3-day and 4-day variations laid out for you. Now you might be thinking, how is doing only 7 exercises going to get me more results? And you would be right, think that. But here's the thing. If you're a beginner, the secret sauce of building muscle isn't doing more exercises, sets and reps, hoping you will somehow strike gold. But rather it's by selecting a few exercises that work for your body, your goals, preferences and equipment, and then practicing the living hell out of them, mastering their form, progressing them, and getting incredibly strong at them. Because weak never looks strong, and strong never looks weak. And as Bruce Lee famously said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And training works much the same way. And only after you've gone through a fairly long period practicing the basic exercises, mastering them, and finally horse-cocking some big weights and reps, should you go back and add more exercises and volume to your plate. So if you've been stuck spinning your wheels, it's time to drop the junk volume, focus on just a few keystone movements, and finally stop being weak for a change. With this out of the way, it's time to take a nosedive and see which these 7 exercises are so you can unfuck your training, pick the right exercise for your training level, and start packing some muscle onto your frame. Now, each of these 7 exercises corresponds to one of the 7 basic major movement patterns. The vertical push or overhead press, the chin-up, and yes, this isn't a movement pattern, but it's in my opinion the best vertical pull there is for getting jacked. The horizontal push, the horizontal pull, our very own deep progression, which again isn't exactly a movement pattern, but you would be crazy not to include dips in your training program unless you really hate your upper body and don't want it looking jacked at all. Then, either a unilateral or bilateral squat variation depending on your preferences, available training setup, and strength level. And lastly, a hip hinge or posterior chain exercise so that you can stop having a weak and frail lower back and squatting down to pick up a piece of paper as if your lower back is made of glass. Now, if you're once again wondering what's up with all the minimalistic shit and where all the isolation exercises, I'm going to tell you that if you're someone who hasn't been getting results from the training, then you can't add icing to a cake that barely exists. Now, of course, that doesn't mean I'm against supplementing your bigger compound movements with isolation work, but as a beginner, the 80-20 rule runs rampant, meaning 20% of the work will get you 80% of the results. So let's focus on this 20 first, and you'll worry about sprinkling isolation exercises to your program later down the line. With this out of the way, let's go over my favorite variations for each movement pattern that will help you finally build some muscle without locking yourself in the Azkaban of gains. Exercise number 1 is a vertical push or overhead press variation. These are movements like progressions of pike push-ups and dumbbell military presses standing or seated with one arm or both at the same time. The trick here is to take the reps of whatever exercise you choose in a deep range of motion with elbows flared out, so that you can also use your side delts instead of merely relying on your front delts and upper chest. Exercise 2 is a vertical pull, with the bar ring chin-up being my top choice as it hits both the biceps and lats to a great degree, and all its regressions and progressions to tailor to your strength and training level, like the leg-assisted and DC variations, and if you're already strong, weighted chin-ups, mixed grip chin-ups, and one-arm supported versions. Then for exercise number 3, we have our horizontal push variations, which is essentially push-up progressions and variations like regular push-ups, deep push-ups with legs elevated, and ring variations in all angles weighted or bodyweight, or if you're a bench press kind of guy and you've got the extra equipment lying around, flat or incline dumbbell bench presses at various angles will wreak havoc to your chest. And of course, for exercise number 4, you can't spell upper back development without a horizontal pull or row variation, with my top pick nowadays being the ring inverted rows in high rep ranges or the single arm ring row in slightly lower rep ranges, or once again, if you're the bodybuilding type, the good old dumbbell rows with both hands or one hand, which is what I single-handedly used to grow my back in my first year of training. Which brings me to the goat of all pressing movements, the upper body squat as they call it, the dip, with my favorite picks being the weighted parallel bar dip or the ring dip variation if you do not have parallel bars, and all these progressions and regressions like the leg assisted versions if you're someone who can't do regular dips yet, or you're looking for a high rep chest finisher or something to do higher reps on. And let's not forget the legs, because strolling around having a jacked upper body but a pancake ass and chicken leg is akin to a Lamborghini sitting on top of some ridiculously small shopping cart wheels. And that just doesn't look good. So starting with the front of the legs, your quad and thigh muscles, with some of my favorite bodyweight variations being deficit split squats, sissy squats, or higher rep heel elevated bodyweight squats. And if you've got some weights, barbell back squats, dumbbell squats with dumbbells on your sides, and weighted split squats and lunges. And if done right, these are more than enough to grow your legs from twigs to, well, bigger twigs. And finishing with most people's boogeyman, the posterior chain hip hinge exercise or hamstring exercise, with my top pick being none other than the deadlift, the daddy of all exercises and all its variations, with Nordic curl progressions coming close second, and even some leg curl variants sprinkled in like ring or sliding disc leg curls to add some volume to your training without killing your nervous system and feeling like a sack of potatoes all the time. Now, if you want a structured training program that includes everything I just laid out, make sure you grab my free Gymless Marauder training plan by clicking the link in the description below. As you can see, there are a ton of progressions and variations to pick from, so you have no excuse not to train hard and consistently. Well, unless you're lazy or succumb to a lack of motivation and tiredness because you can't actually will yourself to do the hard stuff required to get the results that you really want. So now that we've gone over how to unfuck your training by picking just 7 keystone exercises and practicing the living hell out of them, I'll teach you my favorite training splits to run using those 7 key exercises so that you can put everything into a well-structured training split that will deliver the gains that have been evading you for all these years. Now, if this screams your Twinkie, make sure you don't miss the next video where I'll go over the absolute best home training splits to build muscle by training at home, which will appear up here if you're watching in the near future. So, subscribe if you're new here and turn on that notification bell to not miss my next video.